Part 82. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Xiao. Chapter 841. Looking at the entry for this pill, Su Tong felt that it was pretty good, and he could just improve Xiapang's spiritual power. Moreover, not only can they eat it themselves, but they can also eat it, including Dia, Yongxuan, Fasai, and Jixiang. They can also bring some to Master and the others, but it's just a little bit small. Thinking of this, I simply continued to repeat the operation just now, using the Great Sun Ruyi furnace to tear it apart, and the soul of the Wushan old immortal grabbed a big lump and threw it into the immortal furnace. Try activating God's blessing again. This time Wu Sheng Laoxian was really scared and screamed and begged Su Tong for mercy. Don't kill me, I can tell you a big secret. The world is in chaos. Many old monsters will revive and flee overseas for refuge. Before they leave, they will carry out a big conspiracy. If you let me go, I will tell you their plan. However, Su Tong seemed not to have heard what old immortal Wushan said, so he used the Tai's Hang Dan Sutra technique to destroy the immortal furnace with all his strength. This time the hand of God is still not activated. However, the number of pills refined this time was quite large, 7 in total. And one of them has already reached the 8th level, and there is only a slight chance of advancing to the 9th level elixir. After the player consumes this 8th grade pill, his soul will be enhanced by 30%. The effect was much better than the previously refined Wushan pill. Su Tong decided to keep this pill and focus on cultivating it, while the other pills were stored in small bottles. Of course, Ya and the 4 of them each had 1 pill, and everyone got a big improvement after eating it. Especially the cloud salamander. After this little monster took the elixir, its figure suddenly increased by a large circle, and its 6 slender velvet horns suddenly became much longer. It seems that if he can let this little guy grow a little more, he can help him deal with the talisman in the Great Sun Ruyi furnace. Yun Xiang is Yunqi's most important partner, able to swallow the veins of heaven and earth and swallow all kinds of strange magic. Although I can use the Great Sun Ruyi furnace to smash some of the talisman fragments every time, the efficiency is too low and the consumption is huge. Every time, he needs to turn some of the smashed talisman fragments into rolling blood to feed himself back. If this little guy comes to help, his strength will increase even more rapidly. Su Tong then took out the fantasy Rubik's Cube and threw the 8th grade Wushan pill into it. Do you want to spend 300 script points to strengthen this item to level 1? The first enhancement required 300 script points. Seeing this, Su Tong chose yes without any hesitation. Now that he had a huge sum of money in his hands, he would not worry about the distribution of the script at all and directly chose to strengthen. The second level is 600, the third level is 1200, the fourth level is 2400. As the script points in the prop book evaporated rapidly, after spending a total of 38,100 script points, this lifeless pill finally successfully reached the 6th level. It cannot be overstated to say that the effect of level 6 Wushan Dan is completely different from that before the upgrade. Wusheng Dan. Inanimate and immeasurable, non-players can 100% comprehend the inanimate magic and ascend to the status of God in an exceptional way. After the player eats it, his soul will be enhanced by 80%, and he will realize the Sutra of Infinite Creation. Infinite Creation Sutra. After practicing, the soul will increase by 20%, and then it can be enhanced by an additional 15% with each level of practice, for a total of 9 levels. Invalid if consumed repeatedly. Good. Seeing the effect of the elixir, Su Tong finally showed a smile on his face. Nearly 40,000 script points were spent in exchange for the big breakthrough of the second soul. This money was spent like a bloody profit. Su Tong immediately called out the little fat man and threw the pill into his mouth. The little fat man's body reacted within a short while, and wisps of arcs of electricity could not stop coming out of his body. The crackling almost set the room on fire. No, get out quickly. Su Tong was surprised and happy when he saw this. He knew that this was the little fat man who was about to advance, but he didn't dare to let the little fat man stay any longer. He quickly controlled him and rushed out of the room, straight into the sky. Rumble, rumble. Soon there was a dull thunder in the originally clear sky. Many people raised their heads and saw a large dark cloud approaching. In less than 10 seconds, the entire New Territories sky was instantly shrouded in haze. Oh my God, why can't I change this day? At this time, many boatmen who went out to sea to fish changed their faces and hurried to the harbor. The fishery in the New Territories feeds almost half of the people in the New Territories. You can imagine how many boats are out fishing. On weekdays, there are boats that rely on experience to judge today's wind direction and weather. But today, the captains of these boats are also stupid. I have relied on this skill for most of my life, and I have never encountered such a sudden heavy rain. Boom, boom, bang. There was a huge thunderstorm on the sea, and a bolt of lightning as thick as a bowl suddenly struck down, illuminating the entire sky for a moment. The sound of thunder and lightning scared so many fishermen on the sea that they almost knelt on the ground. At this time, Su Tong's soul had returned to his position. He walked out of the room and looked up, only to see the figure of the little fat man in the sky being submerged in a ball of thunder, and the surrounding thunder and lightning almost turned into a liquid. The little fat man's soul strength was already very high, but now after taking the Wushan pill, his strength has doubled, and he has directly broken through the shackles. Now Su Tong was already looking forward to it, wanting to see what level this little fat man could reach after his breakthrough. In this day and age, there are still people with such skills. Under a tea shed on the street, an old man raised his head, with a look of shock on his face covered with yellow spots. After counting with his fingers, he was shocked for a moment. Well done, land god, second soul, whose family's old monster is this? Could it be an old man who came out of Longhu Mountain? Outside the door of a private house in Kowloon City, a woman walked out of the door in a panic. She saw her husband looking seriously at the sky above her head. She hurriedly stepped forward and took her husband's arm. Old Zhang, could it be that our plan was to be destroyed? The leak will lead to the arrival of the god of thunder. The farmer, who was called Lao Zhang, shook his head. It's not like that, it's more like there is some kind of spiritual being going through the tribulation. It's just that I've been calculating for a long time, but I still can't figure out what kind of spiritual being it is. The woman was relieved when she heard this. She thought the plan was leaked, which would lead to the coming of heavenly punishment. After learning that it was not the case, he followed his husband and started to calculate. They saw that their fingers made strange marks and intertwined them to form a seal that was difficult for normal people to twist. After recalculating, they were shocked. Land immortal, could he be an expert from the three religions? Similar situations occurred all over the New Territories. The little fat man's movements were so loud that he couldn't hide them even if he wanted to. Even many players were shocked. It's him. Seeing the thunder in the sky, Sakuragi Kingming's face flickered for a while. He had seen Su Tong's method of dealing with Sakata, so when he saw this situation, the first thing he thought of was Su Tong's face full of flesh. Oh, that's the Tuhao player who injured you and killed Sakata last time. A child appeared quietly next to Sakuragi Sime. The child looked to be only 15 or 16 years old, but his appearance was very unique. He was wearing a loose floral robe and holding a large fan in his hand. Sakuragi Sime seemed very wary of the child's appearance. He unconsciously took 2 steps back, distanced himself from the child and then said, "Yes, it's him." "Humph, I thought it was some kind of 3-headed and 6-armed thing, but it's nothing more than that. Kingming-kun, would you like to give it a try together? This is a good opportunity." The child tilted his neck and said with a smile, "Akakamaru, you'd better not do this, we haven't had a head-on conflict with them yet." Sakuragi Sime suddenly became anxious when he heard this. He had seen Su Tong's strength. Last time, he relied on his clever illusion skills to take advantage of Su Tong's unpreparedness and feint a shot, forcing Su Tong to kill Sakata with one sword. The sharp edge of that sword still makes him tremble every time he thinks about it. He had already made up his mind to wait until the legend from the shrine arrived before confronting Su Tong and the others. At this time, he did not want anyone to provoke this guy. Ha, you are really timid. No wonder your team is just a deputy team. Akimaru let out a hoarse laugh. After pulling away the clothes on his shoulders, he saw a dazzling scar appearing on his shoulders. Do you know what this is? This is the mark left when I fought with the gunslinger. Sakuragi Sime frowned when he heard this. Akimaru was famous among Japanese players for being arrogant. It was said that the wound on his shoulder was a scar left during a duel with the gunslinger, one of the two gods. It has the special power of the gun god. Whether he returns to reality or enters the world of the script again, this wound will not disappear because of this. Being able to fight against a player with a god-level title and escape unscathed is indeed something that can be used to show off for a long time. Then he was seen opening his arms and taking off his large colorful robe. He put the fan in his hand that was bigger than him on his shoulder. Since you won't go, let me show you what it means to be strong. As he spoke, he waved the fan in his hand toward the front, and a raging wind suddenly rose. In an instant, the nine heavens thunder headed straight for him with Akimaru's figure. Originally, the rolling thunder made people panic, but now the sudden rise of the wind brought down the thunder from the sky in an instant. At this time, many ordinary people who were hiding at home became unlucky people. They were instantly hit by lightning caused by the strong wind, and turned into a handful of charcoal, falling straight to the ground. Su Tong also immediately noticed something was wrong with this sudden gust of wind. Su Tong could understand the thunder and lightning, but such a huge gust of wind was not caused by Xiao Pang. Someone is up to something. Thinking of this, Su Tong frowned. He realized that someone wanted to interfere with the little fat man's tribulation, and an unknown fire suddenly arose in his heart. If the tiger doesn't show its power, you think I'm a sick cat. Note, I will take a day off tomorrow and go to the hospital for a re-examination. I said I wanted to go last month, but I haven't gone yet. The old doctor who will be attending the consultation tomorrow will be there. I will go for a re-examination tomorrow, but this thing takes time. I'll go in the morning and come back in the afternoon. It's too energy consuming, so I'll take a day off. Hope it's approved. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 842. To overcome the tribulation, Xiao Pang needs to use the power of thunder to temper his soul. Now someone is stirring up strong winds and drawing down thunder from the sky. This will not only interfere with the success or failure of Xiao Pang's tribulation, but will even involve a large number of innocent people. Immediately Su Tong jumped up and walked straight in the direction of the strong wind. I saw that he was extremely fast, and it felt like he had crossed more than 10 meters in one step. The land god shrank to an inch. At this point, there was no need to use any skills, everything was equivalent to instinct. When he glanced sideways, he saw a skinny child, shirtless, holding a large fan. When the fan flapped, the surrounding wind surged. Hey, it came so fast. The child turned around and saw Su Tong, the real owner, coming to the door. Instead of being afraid, he let out a burst of weird laughter. Su Tong walked over with a cold face, raised his hand and struck with a sword light. However, when Akimaru saw this, instead of dodging, he raised his thin fist and hit it hard against the blazing sword light. A strange light emitted from the skinny palm, and when it touched the sword light, it seemed as if a special power surged out from it. Boom! There was a harsh buzzing sound, and Su Tong's sword light was shattered by the opponent's punch. Jean Deo. Su Tong's eyes overflowed with golden light, but he found that the child did not have any traces of Deo Deo. Instead, he was enveloped in a turbid and sinister aura, and a prop card could be vaguely seen in this turbid aura. Outline. Could it be that the other party is not taking the cultivation route, but the pure prop card route as usual? The combination of various prop cards can completely match more powerful skills. This route is chosen by the vast majority of players, but the number of players who have truly reached this level of strength is extremely small. Finally here, let me try to see how strong you are. Akimaru's eyes narrowed into a slit. Facing Sutong, the real owner who came to the door, not only was he not afraid, but he became excited as if he had taken stimulants. Try this. Akimaru waved the fan in his hand, the huge fan rolled, and the entire surrounding space became distorted. 800 Wind Sparrow. Consume 1200 script points to summon the power of the storm to cause covering damage to the target in front. Sutong's pupils tightened slightly, he summoned the pure yang sword in his hand, and struck it against the wind and waves. 8-sided slash. After the sword edge drew an arc in his hand, a sharp sound of breaking wind broke out in the air. Ha 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 ha, try this again. Akimaru's mouth opened wide, his jaw opened like a python's mouth, and a ball of black flame spit out from his mouth. The black flame seemed to have some special properties, and with the blessing of the storm, it instantly engulfed Sutong's figure. Madman. In the distance, Sakuragi Sime frowned. He had heard of Akimaru, a lunatic, a long time ago, but he didn't expect him to be so crazy. The plot of the script world this time has not yet surfaced. At this time, he went to fight with the opponent without hesitation. In the eyes of Sakuragi Sime and others, fighting locally is simply asking for death. Maybe it's also an opportunity. Seeing this, the two people beside Sakuragi Sime were already a little eager to try. Since someone is taking the lead, maybe this is also a good opportunity for them. If they can take advantage of this, they can cause serious damage, or even kill one of the top players among the Eastern players. It is also a good choice. Compared to Sakuragi Sime's strategy, this guy's strategy is too conservative. But just when they were eager to give it a try, a strange color suddenly appeared on Akimaru's excited face, and the flames he breathed out were rapidly shrinking at the moment. Sutong stood high in the air, and a huge stove appeared behind him. The fire was shining with bright light, and the mouth of the stove was opened. Whether it was the strange wind or the black flame, they were all swallowed up by Sutong into the Ruyi furnace. Then, under Sutong's thought, it turned into a pure energy and fed it back to Sutong from the furnace. The Ruyi furnace of the sun is Sutong's real method for beheading the Taoist queen. It is the innate Taoist foundation and achievement of Yanshu. Today is the first time I tried it. Unexpectedly, the effect was better than I expected. Yeah. Seeing this, Akimaru simply summoned the props again. This guy's script points seemed to be free of charge. As soon as he made a move, 3 or 4 props card abilities came towards Sutong. Sutong didn't talk nonsense with this guy, and directly destroyed the roof of the Ruyi furnace and went down. No matter what your skills were, the Ruyi furnace would not refuse anyone who came and would devour it directly. Burst. Seeing several abilities being swallowed up by this big furnace, Akimaru squeezed the seal with his fingers, trying to control the skills just now to explode himself. As a result, nothing happened to the Ruyi furnace, but the old immortal Wushan who was trapped in the Ruyi furnace was blown up. Enough. Beam Dragon Talisman. Sutong opened his hand to summon golden light and threw it at Akimaru. He held the pure yang sword in one hand and aimed at the kid's head to chop it down. The result that was completely unexpected was that when faced with the sword light coming from Shalongfu and Sutong, Akimaru not only did not dodge, but instead hit him head-on. Wrong. Fortunately, Sutong sensed something was wrong and hurriedly stopped his hand. At the same time, he controlled the Shalong talisman and pulled it back, allowing the Chunyang sword to narrowly avoid Akimaru's head. But when he took a closer look, he realized that the sinister aura of the child who was bound by the dragon-binding talisman in front of him had disappeared. His eyes were dull, as if he had been greatly stimulated, and he looked foolish and foolish. Appearance. Including the fan in this kid's hand, it also disappeared at this moment. Seeing this, Su Tong put his finger on the child's pulse, and then he was sure that this was an ordinary child, not a player at all. The most direct evidence is that there was a very dazzling scar on the child's chest, but it has now disappeared. What ability is this? This is the first time I have seen such a weird ability. Su Tong was surprised and inevitably became wary. The other party seemed to have some special power that could temporarily transfer his will and strength to ordinary people. If I hadn't held back just now, I was afraid that this little kid would have become the other party's scapegoat. This change surprised Sakuragi Sime and others who were hiding far away. No wonder Akimaru always looks like a desperate man, but he didn't expect his methods to be so dirty. When several players following Sakuragi Sime saw this, they couldn't help but secretly rejoice that they didn't follow him stupidly, otherwise they would have to fight the strong men of the other camp when Akimaru dissipated and left. So they all yelled at Akimaru for being cunning, and then ran away with Sakuragi Sime without looking back. Su Tong glanced around, and after finding no trace of those Japanese players, he placed the child in a relatively safe place. This devil's ability is very troublesome, similar to the ability to seize a body, but he can transfer his will at any time. Once he is allowed to get close to the people around him, he may cause some trouble at a critical moment. However, there seems to be a scar on the other party's body, which may be a good breakthrough point. After thinking for a moment, Su Tong turned around and stood on the roof of a building, looking up at the thick cumulus clouds in the sky. Rumble, rumble. At this moment, the sky was already covered by thick thunder clouds, and from time to time, several huge electric rays penetrated from the clouds. The tribulation that tests Xiaopang has just begun. In order to prevent the situation like that from happening, Su Tong had to hold a sword to protect the law. One man stood on the top of the building with his sword raised high, squinting his eyes to observe the movements around him, just like an eagle hovering above everyone's heads, looking high and ready to strike with all his strength at any time. Boom, boom, boom. A bolt of thunder tore open the void and hit the little fat man hard. Just this one blow almost caused the little fat man to be split in half, and the pain made the little fat man cry out in pain. Su Tong and the little fat man were connected mentally, so they could naturally feel the intensity of the pain caused by this thunder. But he couldn't interfere in this matter. If he couldn't get over this hurdle, the little fat man would always be just a ray of his own thoughts. This was definitely not what he wanted to see. When the lightning strike fell, the lightning around the little fat man almost turned into a liquid, allowing him to crazily absorb the essence of lightning before the second lightning disaster struck. Overcoming the tribulation itself is also an opportunity. These thunder and lightning essences would not appear in the past, and they can only be piled up under the pressure of the thunder tribulation at this moment. After absorbing these thunder and lightning essences in one breath, you can see that the dense thunder spells on the little fat man are quickly disappearing, replaced by the rich power of thunder. If this level is passed, the little fat man will advance from a weapon to a spirit, with a bright future. But this is obviously not an easy thing. Boom. A muffled sound made everyone in the new territories feel as scary as the sky was about to fall. Many people were so frightened that they knelt on the ground and began to pray to the gods. Above the thunder clouds, the little fat man seemed to be slapped hard on the ground by a big hand from the sky. His originally chubby body was flattened by the slap. Since the Ming dynasty, I have never seen anyone make such a big move. The old man under the tea shed raised his head and watched, counted with his fingers, then shook his head and left. This is the age of the end of the Dharma, and all Dharmas are extinct. It would be strange if such an act against heaven could succeed. The couple who were originally standing outside the house turned around and walked into the house when they saw this. They have already seen that it is impossible to succeed. This is the second time that I have almost been shattered by the power of heaven. I am afraid that it will be wiped out in the next moment. The probability of success is already very slim. Rumble. There were roaring waves on the sea, and some fishermen and farmers looked to the sky, with horrified expressions in their empty eyes. I saw a huge spherical lightning above the dark clouds above my head, gradually falling from the dark clouds, and the dazzling light illuminated the entire new territory's sky. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 843. Rise. Seeing that the situation was getting worse, Su Tong had to take action. Although he couldn't intervene directly, he had his own way. Behind him, he saw the Ruyi furnace rising up with green smoke, and the billowing life energy was like a giant dragon soaring into the sky, spurting out from the furnace mouth, piercing the clouds and reaching Xiaopang's body. Su Tong burns his own blood to nourish the second soul. This seems to others to be crazy. His originally strong body now looks like a withered bone. He doesn't even have any muscles on his body and is as thin as skin and bones. Generally, a large amount of blood energy was put into the Ruyi furnace, and then the Ruyi furnace was injected into the little fat man's body. Once Xiaopang failed to overcome the tribulation, Su Tong would be like fetching water from a bamboo basket. Not only would he be hit by the tribulation, but his own blood would also be depleted. However, Su Tong didn't care about such a result. He had failed to save this big fat man before, but now, he would never allow this to happen again. As for the lack of energy, hey, burning yourself is not enough, adding another immortal is enough. A gleam of cruelty flashed in Su Tong's eyes. Originally, the remnant soul of the Wuxian old immortal was intended to be handed over to the master and the others, but at this time, he no longer cared so much. As Su Tong's thoughts arose, the screams of Wu Sheng Laoxian were immediately heard in the great Sun Ruyi furnace. Asshole, I curse you to a bad death. Wu Sheng Laoxian struggled, trying to rush out of the Ruyi furnace, but found that his struggle was of no use at all. He could only watch the storm coming from the furnace, shattering his remaining soul. Burn it and refine his essence and spirit to make fuel for the little fat man. Thank you. An idea occurred to Su Tong, and the smoke from the Ruyi stove above his head was billowing like a tide, pouring crazily into Xiaopang's body. Nourished by this huge and pure life energy, the little fat man's body that had been flattened quickly recovered. He opened his chubby little mouth and sucked in the surrounding lightning essence. Hiss. The silver-white lightning essence was sucked into the body by the little fat man, and in an instant it turned into a flashing ball of electricity. Then the little fat man shouted loudly and took the initiative to rush towards the bright lightning above his head. At this moment, the figure of the little fat man suddenly disappeared in the lightning. Even the connection between Su Tong and little fatty was severed in an instant. Come on. Su Tong looked up at the ball lightning in the sky. He resisted the urge to rush in and take a look several times and chose to wait silently. Just as time passed by, the little fat man seemed to have completely lost contact, and Su Tong's heart began to sink to the bottom. Rumble, rumble. At this time, the thunder calamity in the sky began to gradually dissipate, and the thunder no longer seemed as shocking as before. Su Tong took out various pills from the prop book and stuffed them into his mouth. The blood in his body was so withered that he looked as weak as an old man who was hundreds of years old. Did you fail? Su Tong has not given up yet. He believes that this little fat man will not let him down. It's just that the thunder in the sky has almost completely dissipated. If the little fat man has successfully overcome the disaster, then why is there no movement at this moment? Just when Su Tong began to worry about the safety of the little fat man, suddenly a white light broke through the sky, followed by a huge thunder, directly hitting the Great Sun Ruyi furnace. Boom! After the Ruyi furnace was hit by the lightning, Su Tong was not injured, but was filled with silver liquid. What's this? These silver liquids filled the entire Great Sun Ruyi road like mercury. Su Tong could feel that there was a rich source of power in it. At the same time, a familiar feeling hit his heart. Su Tong's heart moved, and he saw a flash of lightning. The next moment, a little fat man sat cross-legged on top of his head. The difference from the little fat man before was that there was inevitably a yin energy in the little fat man's body, and his whole body was covered with thick clothes to cover up the talisman marks on his body. At this moment, the little fat man seemed to have a living body, with his hair standing upside down, and dazzling electric light bursting out from time to time. There is no doubt that the little fat man succeeded this time. Su Tong tried to reach out and poke the little fat man's cheek, and found that when his fingers touched it, it felt a bit like an electric shock, and his fingers were a little numb. At this moment, the little fat man had not really woken up, and Su Tong did not dare to take him back into his body rashly. He could only throw him into the hall, wait for it to fully recover and be able to control the thunder and lightning overflowing from his body, and then take it back into his body. Then call back the Great Sun Ruyi furnace. Taking a closer look, he saw silvery white liquid rippling in the furnace. After Su Tong tried to convert these liquids into life essence, he suddenly felt hot all over his body, and a large amount of life breath began to pour out of the Ruyi furnace and penetrate into him. In the body that has dried up. This power is more pure, and it has a masculine and righteous energy. When the physical blood is replenished, when you look back, good guy, it is still full, and it seems that there is no consumption at all. Su Tong guessed that this thing should be the treasure that the little fat man brought for him after he successfully escaped from the tribulation. He took out a bottle, tried to put a little bit in it, and then threw it into the prop book. Thunder effusion. All things are born from the yang, which is the essence of thunder. Things created by pure yang have countless mysterious and miraculous effects. It can be used to refine weapons and elixirs, and it can also nourish all things, eliminate all evils, and slay evil spirits. Looking at the entry in the props book, Su Tong's eyes lit up. This was definitely a good thing. A full furnace of thunder fluid, wouldn't it mean that he was carrying an oversized supply bag with him? In addition to being able to use the Great Sun Ruyi furnace to transform it into life force, this thing is a rare treasure. This time it's really a waste of money. Suddenly Su Tong was in a good mood and hurriedly put the Ruyi furnace into his body. At this time, seeing that the thunder clouds in the sky had begun to clear up, Su Tong's heart moved and he realized that this seemed to be a good opportunity. He told Gu Zibai in the team channel, "Let Abin and the others carry the Dragon King out. They say this is the appearance of the Dragon King." Gu Zibai told the matter to Abin, who was beside him. Although Abin was tall and thick, his brain was still bright. He immediately realized that this was not a good opportunity to promote Grandpa Long. So people immediately lifted up the Dragon King eagle and walked out. There was no need for publicity along the way, just singing the song Descendants of the Dragon. The singing gradually grew louder under the haze. When the common people emerged from their homes and looked outside, they happened to see Abin and the others carrying Lord Dragon around the street and heading straight to the pier. When the Dragon Prince arrived at the pier, the originally gloomy sky began to shine with dazzling sunlight, and the sea gradually calmed down. In just a blink of an eye, it returned to its usual sunny state. This scene was remembered by many people on the dock, and they subconsciously felt as if the Dragon King had appeared. There were not a few people following behind to worship the Dragon King. What surprised people even more was that Simpson brought a group of people to watch the fun. Since Simpson was taught by Su Tong last time, this simple missionary seems to have obtained a manual for preaching. A clear tactical thinking has been drawn up in his mind. If he can't beat him, he will join. So when people saw a group of foreign monks running up to the Dragon King's statue and putting a cross on the Dragon King's hand, although they didn't understand what was going on, it was obvious that even these normally aloof foreign monks only treated the Dragon King like this. The reverence and pride in my heart exploded in an instant. That night, a large amount of faith began to surge. Although it is not as large and pure as the original Yueyang city, as long as the Dragon Prince is established, there will be more and more incense and merit in the future. Brother Tong, what you did last night was really scary. At noon the next day, Guo Xiang from the Ling team came to have a meal with Taishao, Dibo, and others. This time, in addition to the three of them, we also brought one more person, who played the role of a teacher, named Atao. He is also a master in their Ridge team, and now their team members are basically all here. This inevitably made Su Tong complain about the whereabouts of Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu. He didn't know what these two guys were doing and why they hadn't completed their identity tasks yet. Speaking of what happened last night, Guo Xiang's face was filled with excitement and envy. If Brother Tong is willing, when this script world ends, I can introduce Mr. Mo to you. I believe that with your strength, Mr. Mo will be happy to be your friend. The boss Mo Guo Xiang mentioned was none other than the leader of the Mo clan, Mo Feng, one of the 6 regiments. Although he is not a title-level powerhouse, the fact that Mo sect is one of the 6 regiments shows how strong this boss Mo is. Su Tong did not refuse this. On the one hand, he hoped to meet this boss Mo and compare his own strength among these players who have top resources. On the other hand, I also want to ask the other party for advice on how to enable the team to build its own assets in high-end exhibitions. Speaking of which, Akimaru was very troublesome last night, so please be careful in the future. Su Tong brought up Qi Guwen and explained this guy's situation to Guo Xiang and others. The world of this script has just begun, and the two sides are only fighting for the first time. However, both Sakuragi Sime, who is good at illusions, and Akimaru, who fought with him last night, are not bad. The two of them retreated from his hands calmly, and there is something strange about it. Ability occupies the majority. If they are not careful, they may suffer great losses. Oh, by the way, we're not just here for a meal, we also have something very important to do. Guo Xiang put down the pig knuckle that was almost eaten out, and suddenly remembered something, and lowered her voice and said, "Yesterday we got an intelligence that a treasure exchange meeting was going to be held in our school. It seems that there is a doctor over there with the Japanese. I will come to participate in academic discussions. I estimate that this Pinbao exchange meeting will probably be a team battle between us and the Japanese." Guo Xiang analyzed the information at hand and found that the world of the script was placed in this background for no reason. Even if the enemy and allies confront each other, the storyline will still continue to develop. And based on past experience and intelligence, it will only become more intense. This is the list I got secretly. There must be Japs players in it. As a teacher, Atao took out the list he had stolen from his bag and handed it to Su Tong. After Su Tong took it, he opened it and saw that there were many people in it, not only Japanese people, but also several Han people. But when Su Tong glanced at the members on the list, Su Tong suddenly frowned and saw a person's name written on it, Mansai Musashi Gen. For some reasons, the originally set big environment background could not be written like that, so I made some changes to the content of chapter 29, which had little impact. The big environment was not allowed to be written, so I wrote the small background. The main line is still based on ghosts and gods. Mainly, confrontation is supplementary. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 844. Lord Mansai. In front of the new territory's shipport, Sakuragi Haruaki and his team members excitedly came forward and bowed 90 degrees to the old man in front of him. Very good. The old man was wearing a kimono with Japanese characteristics, his long white hair was tied up, and his rosy skin was actually more rosy and delicate than those women. If Sakuragi Haruaki hadn't known that Master Mansai was over 200 years old, he might have thought that the old man in front of him was only in his early 70s. Wanzai's smile was very friendly, giving people the impression that he was standing there like a senior scholar, full of the weight and calmness of an old scholar. Facing Sakuragi Sime, Mansai reached out and patted the child on the shoulder. Onmyo Shrine has not had an outstanding junior like you for a long time. Sakuragi Sime felt a secret joy in her heart. Just when she was about to speak, the voice of the old man in front of her suddenly changed. But I heard that not only did you do nothing after coming to the new territory, but you even burned down the supplies needed by the empire. Sakuragi Haruaki was startled when he heard this, and the hand on his shoulder suddenly became heavy. Then Sakuragi Haruaki was horrified to find that his body could not move. Not only was his body unable to move, but even the prop card could not be activated. A biting coldness was flowing along his shoulders and throughout his body. For a moment, a feeling of coldness, weakness, and unstoppable trembling in every inch of the muscles came over, making Sakuragi Qingming clearly feel that his life was firmly controlled by this old man. As long as there is a slight mistake in what he says next, the other party can make his life worse than death with just a pinch of his fingers. This kind of death threat was something Sakuragi Sime had not experienced for a long time. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down gradually. After sorting out his thoughts, he said, "As you said, this is ours. It's a shame, but I'm ready to wash it away with the blood of my enemies." Hearing this answer, the smile on the old man's face became more kind. "Very good, I am looking forward to your performance." That kind of harmless look and kind voice are more like the encouragement of an elder to a younger generation in the eyes of others around him. But only Sakuragi Sime could deeply feel the unpredictable malice in the old man's warm words. A dozen large boxes were carried off the ship together. These boxes are all specially made, and it is impossible to tell what is inside. Their boxy appearance looks more like some kind of military product. The only thing that gives people a direct feeling is that it is very heavy. One box requires 6 or 7 men on the dock to move it. Sakuragi Sime looked at these boxes and frowned, but didn't ask any more questions. The group of people got in the car and headed straight to the mansion. As soon as Mansai Musashigen and his party left, there was a group of people on the pier to report the news. Not long after, a Ben found Su Tong with the news. At this moment, Su Tong and Gu Zibai were taking a bath in the big bathhouse. After hearing the news, neither of them was surprised. They just signaled to Ben and the others to find more people to pay attention to the movements of these Japs. The old immortal Wuxian he met at the Rose Hotel last time made Su Tong realize that the script was not simple. Similarly, Gen Mansai Musashi, an old monster who had lived for more than 200 years, might not be sure of victory. So he planned to follow his master's ideas, work step by step, accumulate food, and slowly become king. It would be better to leave this old thief Mansai Musashi Gento to the master's wife when the time comes. Boss, there is no news yet about what happened to Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu. After sending a Ben away, Gu Zibai started to complain. If Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu had completed their identity missions and joined them, they wouldn't have trouble finding those little devils now. But the problem is that there is no movement or news from the two of them now, and the progress is not as good as Li Bo, who is the last one. This speed is a bit too slow. Considering the strength of the two of them, it is really inappropriate. Is it possible that they haven't entered the script yet? Su Tong made a guess at this time. Because he found that everyone entered the script at a different time, otherwise it would be difficult to explain why the two of them have not completed the simplest identity task yet. Then what are we doing now? Are we waiting here? Gu Zibai rested his head on his hands, feeling bored. He wanted to fight, especially those little devils. Su Tong patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, all the old thieves from Wanzai are here. Are you afraid that there won't be a fight?" It's true that these little devils have found a backer and must take action. Gu Zibai nodded. As soon as the two of them finished speaking, Li Bo's voice came from the team channel. Boss, I seem to have encountered some trouble here. Since the last time Li Bo followed Su Tong's advice, he has successfully climbed to the position of superintendent. As for the person who was originally sitting in this position, I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but he fell into the sea inexplicably while driving home. Su Tong was still very concerned about Li Bo, the mascot. Seeing that he rarely asked for help, Su Tong asked what was going on. I thought this guy had encountered some problem, but when I heard it, I realized that it turned out to be a case. The deceased was a college student who hanged himself in the college's warehouse in the middle of the night. Li Bo didn't want to deal with this kind of case at all. He casually defined suicide and got over it in a hurry. In this era, human life is as cheap as grass. How many people are struggling? Walking around the pier, the huge grievances are nothing, committing suicide. This kind of person doesn't deserve sympathy at all. But when the body was delivered to the police station, strange things happened. First, the people at the police station saw the corpse and were so frightened that they peed their pants. Then the body disappeared without anyone noticing. Li Bo said and sent a visual screenshot. In the morgue, a strange figure was drawn on a large pool of blood, but no one could understand what it was. This case now falls on Li Bo's head. It is a side task. If the task fails, his current identity will be taken away. After listening to Li Bo's story, Su Tong immediately became interested. He was idle, so he might as well help Li Bo. So they signaled to Li Bo to check the student's information first and investigate his background and identity to see if there were any other clues. They would go find him later. After Li Bo expressed his understanding, he hurriedly went to investigate. After Su Tong and Gu Zibai took a bath, they just came out of the bathhouse and saw that the Dragon King statue invited by the boss had been placed in the hall. Then he and the workers in the bathhouse respectfully presented tributes to the Dragon King, including 3 incense candles. Since the last catastrophe of Little Fatty, more and more people are worshipping the Dragon King in every household. The Yuxing gang also announced that in the future, the rent of shops dedicated to the Dragon King would be reduced by 30%. The effect was immediately noticeable. Whether it is sincerely or to reduce the monthly rent, the number of incense merits is increasing day by day. What is even more surprising is that a large part of the incense merits are extremely pure, and the quality is even higher than that of Yuyang City. This discovery really made Su Tong a little confused, but he just regarded it as an accident and didn't think much about it. When the two arrived at the police station, Li Bo had been waiting for them outside the gate. As soon as he saw Su Tong and Gu Zibai, Li Bo became extremely excited and hurriedly pulled them inside. As he walked, he handed Su Tong the information he had investigated. "Boss, I finally completed my identity mission. You must help me." Li Bo clasped his hands together, sweat dripping from his forehead in such anxiety. Gu Zibai raised his nose and couldn't see how useless Li Bo was. He thought to himself, why did you drag this good-for-nothing into the team? Su Tong silently looked at the information Li Bo investigated. After seeing the file, the person named Mao Suifeng was a student of the University of New Territories. Su Tong remembered that Guo Xiang and the others were also students of this school. So he took out the pager that Guo Xiang and the others had given him before and sent a message to Guo Xiang and the others. Let them inquire about the details of Mao Suifeng. Then I walked to the morgue and smelled a strong smell of blood before I even entered the door. After pushing the door open, the turbid smell in the air was nauseating, and the walls and floor were covered in large graffiti smeared with blood. Su Tong couldn't tell what the drawing was even after taking a quick look. He asked Li Bo who saw the body. Li Bo immediately called 2 police officers. Their descriptions were very confusing. It seemed that they were really frightened. Seeing that Su Tong couldn't find out any information, he simply stopped asking Li Bo and asked Li Bo what was on the ground. Where does the blood come from? After all, the corpse committed suicide by hanging, so the corpse couldn't have put so much blood on itself. Li Bo still didn't know anything about it. Fortunately, the policeman on the side said, the blood is from another corpse. When they arrived, they found that the corpse had become torn into pieces. With this resurrected corpse, are you still a corpse-removing maniac? Gu Zibai said half-jokingly. Su Tong did not comment on this, but just asked where the dismembered body was originally placed. There are usually 3 places in the morgue. The left is empty, the student is in the middle, and the right is the dismembered body. One of the police officers spoke up. Su Tong looked around after hearing this, and then he lay down on the morgue bed in the middle as if he was possessed, sitting upright stiffly in the eyes of everyone's doubts and confusion. He walked down from the iron bed and walked to the morgue where the corpses were broken into pieces. His eyes couldn't help but show a bit of confusion. It doesn't make sense. If it's just to dismember the body, why should there be blood everywhere, but there isn't much blood on the morgue? Thinking of this, Su Tong looked around and suddenly noticed the blood-red handprints on the corner. He squinted and walked forward, looking at the blood on the floor. A thought suddenly popped into his mind, unless the other corpse is also alive. Thinking of this, Su Tong squatted down, activated his divine eye and looked around. Suddenly he saw something in the corner of the cabinet on the left. He stretched out his hand and pinched it, and took out a piece of cloth stained with blood from the corner. Su Tong opened the cloth and frowned suddenly when he saw a familiar name crookedly written on the note, Ma Hongwen. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 845. Seeing the name on the note, Su Tong's eyes showed a moment of astonishment. Is it a coincidence? Impossible, Ma Qi is still alive, but there is absolutely no way Ma Hongwen is alive. Su Tong recalled the scene when he jumped into the river holding a big stone. Even if Ma Hongwen had wings, he wouldn't be able to survive, let alone this is the new territories. So if it weren't for Ma Hongwen, there would be quite a few people who knew this name in this era. After all, the reputation of the most dandy young man in the capital was very bad. But he deliberately left the strip here with Ma Hongwen's name written on it. Could it be that someone was deliberately using this note to remind themselves of something? In confusion, Su Tong heard the prompt from the prop book. Main Mission 2, Non-Existent Clues. Mission Description, a clue that shouldn't appear appears in a place that shouldn't appear. Don't you find it interesting? Mission successful, all team members receive 300 alliance points. Mission failure, 20% of the team's alliance points will be deducted. Seeing the mission prompt, Su Tong was really confused, but that was fine. The missions of the branch and main missions happened to overlap, and the source of all the clues pointed to the resurrected corpse Spear Swafeng. Thinking of this, Su Tong put the note away and sent the task to Gu Zibai and Li Bo through sharing. Let's go to Mao Swafeng's home. After a person dies, no matter where the body is, the soul will return to his home through consciousness and meet his family members. This is why people often say that the first 7 are very important. Since Mao Swafeng is a corpse, he will most likely go home to have a look after he is resurrected. As long as we find the spear master, the rest of the things will be much easier to handle. Li Bo had already investigated the address of Mao Swafeng's home, which was in Kowloon City. The location of this place in the new territories is very special. On the one hand, this place has a unique topography. There are 9 mountains running across the north end. Although the mountains are not big or high, they move like dragons. The 9 mountains are like 9 dragons. Kowloon City is on the dragon. The position of the mouth. In terms of feng shui, the feng shui environment here is not bad. But in fact, the situation here is very bad, so bad that police officers like Li Bo dare not just walk inside. Because theoretically, This place was still under the jurisdiction of the Manchu Qing dynasty, but it was connected to the jurisdiction of the Yu people. But now that the Qing dynasty has perished and the warlords in various places are now divided, who has time to take care of things here? As for those foreign adults, they don't like to do such thankless things, so that this place has almost become a no-care zone, where a large number of exiles gather. Many of them are desperados who fled from the mainland. Fortunately, Su Tong and the others didn't have any pressure to enter here. They used the police station phone number to call a bin. Soon a bin led someone to the police station and led them into Kowloon City. It is really ironic to let gangsters clear the way for these police officers. But in the current new territories, it is so bizarre. Kowloon is Hongsheng's territory. The boss of Hongsheng's hall is called Do Fei. He got the news early and is taking care of it outside. As soon as he saw Su Tong and others arriving, Do Fei began to murmur in his heart, wondering what the evil star could do here. Master Du, if you have anything to say, you don't have to come in person. Do Fei took the initiative to come forward and said with a smile. Haha, it's time to be idle. If you come here to hang out, brother Do Fei won't welcome you. Su Tong grinned, and his fleshy face smiled, which inevitably made people think of the word ferocious. Even Do Fei was made hairy by this smile. He quickly raised his hand as a gesture of respect and asked Su Tong to come in. At this moment, Kowloon City is far from as complex as a fortress with tall buildings like in the movie. To be honest, it is more like the design style of the pig cage walled city in the movie Kung Fu. There are a lot of refugees here, so it seems a bit crowded if everyone lives together. As Do Fei walked, he introduced Kowloon City to Su Tong, with its tall and low towers, and the corridors filled with all kinds of messy things. When Su Tong passed by the door of a family, he glanced inside and could roughly see a small room with 6 beds in it, with a layer of cloth in the middle as a partition. This should be a family. It's just that the room is too crowded, not as big as a hospital ward. I'm looking for a man named Mao Suifeng who can take me to meet his family. After Su Tong visited a section of the road, he asked Do Fei. Spear Suifeng. Do Fei was a little surprised when he heard the name. Isn't he dead? The news of Mao Suifeng's corpse fraud was tightly sealed by the police station, so outsiders naturally didn't know about it, so Do Fei was subconsciously surprised when he heard Su Tong's inquiry. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, stared at Do Fei and asked, "Are you familiar with him?" "That street kid? Well, that young man is pretty good. He's a rare top student here. You know. Do Fei subconsciously wanted to curse, but then he thought about it. Even if the person Du Ye named was a dead person, he had to give some face, so he could only change his words and praise him. After finishing speaking, he said with a face full of regret, "Didn't he just die not long ago? I heard that he committed suicide by hanging. He usually looks like a deadbeat, but he died in such a humiliating way." Do Fei watched his words and wanted to see Master Du's reaction. When Su Tong saw this, he knew that Do Fei was testing his intentions, so he didn't hide it. "You also think that his death is a humiliation? That's fine. I'm here today to be a corpse king and avenge him." The so-called corpse king means a person who investigates the cause of death of the deceased. Su Tong opened his mouth to be a corpse king for a student, but now Do Fei dared to talk nonsense and hurriedly led Su Tong and his party to Mao Suifeng's house. On the way, I also talked to Su Tong a lot about Mao Suifeng. Mao Suifeng's parents were ordinary people. His mother was a beggar's aunt, and his father was a groom. They spent their daily lives gambling, drinking, and doing anything else. Mao Suifeng grew up in this environment. In normal people's thinking, like most children in Kowloon City, he should be able to become a bewitcher at a young age. But Mao Suifeng is a different kind of person. This kid loves reading and will read all kinds of weird books. Later, he even went to college, which was completely unusual in Kowloon City. To them, Going to school was just a game played by rich young men and young ladies. It was precisely because of this that De Fei knew about Mao Suifeng. While talking, De Fei led a group of people to Mao Suifeng's house. As soon as he walked to the door, he saw a woman walking out of the house with red eyes. After seeing De Fei, he was stunned for a moment and then said, "Brother Fei, I won't accept guests today." As soon as he said this, De Fei suddenly noticed that more than a dozen pairs of eyes behind him were staring at him. His face suddenly stiffened, he coughed twice, and hurriedly said, "No, no, no, that's Mr. Du, here to help you. Our Xiaofeng is the king of corpses." De Fei said and quickly moved out of the way. Only then did the woman notice the figures of Su Tong and others behind Brother Fei. As soon as he heard that he was willing to be the king of corpses for his child, tears immediately burst out of his eyes uncontrollably. He quickly invited Su Tong and the others into the room to talk. Su Tong signaled Li Bo to ask about the basic situation of Mao Suifeng's mother, and he walked to Mao Suifeng's room to observe. Rather than a room, it is actually just a small partition. A space the size of a bed is all that Mao Suifeng has. The room is filled with various books. It can be seen that Mao Suifeng seems to be really, as De Fei said, he is a good boy who loves to learn. At this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed a small shrine placed on the table beside the bed. Will Mao Suifeng still worship gods? Su Tong saw the shrine and asked. Yes. Mao Suifeng's mother said with some uncertainty. De Fei, who was on the side, leaned over to take a look. He immediately lost his face and said to Mao Suifeng's mother, "How many times have I told you not to worship such a messy god? You have to worship the Dragon King. If you worship the Dragon King, your monthly rent will be reduced by 30%, do you understand?" As he said that, De Fei was about to reach out for the shrine, but Su Tong raised his hand and opened it. Su Tong's eyes came to the shrine to take a closer look. The position of the old mother of Yinshan. Looking at this strange name, Su Tong frowned for a moment. Another strange god. Ordinarily, a child who doesn't like to fool around, loves to study, and wants to change his destiny through reading is impossible to believe in these stories of gods and ghosts, but why is there still an inexplicable god placed on the table? Thinking of this, Su Tong suddenly remembered the words of Wu Sheng Laoxian before his death. Is it possible that Mao Suifeng's death has something to do with these so-called gods? Just as Su Tong was thinking about it, Gu Zibai's shout suddenly came from outside the door, "Stop!" Immediately before anyone could react, Gu Zibai's figure rushed out like a sharp sword. When Su Tong heard the noise, he rushed out followed by Gu Zibai. The two of them rushed into the narrow corridor one after another. Gu Zibai shouted in the team channel, "This person seems to be Mao Suifeng, and he is very corpse-like." After hearing Gu Zibai's words, Su Tong activated his spiritual eyes and took a closer look, and sure enough he saw a figure wearing student clothes running forward quickly. The speed was so fast that some people only saw a black shadow sliding past, and they had already rushed more than 10 meters away. "Let me." Seeing this, Su Tong no longer held back his strength, and the speed of his feet suddenly increased. His figure shrunk to the ground and was like an after-image. After passing Gu Zibai, he rushed behind Mao Suifeng almost the next second, stretched out his hand and slapped this guy on the shoulder. "Where else can you run?" However, the moment Su Tong slapped Mao Suifeng with his palm, Mao Suifeng seemed to be suddenly frozen in place. He stood upright on the ground with his feet together, his head twisted to the back of his neck strangely, and he spoke out. There was a burst of laughter like that of an old woman. "Hey, hey, hey, enter my cave of 8 monsters in the Yin Mountain, and live forever without me. Since my fellow Taoist is here, don't go back." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 846. Su Tong's front was suddenly filled with confusion, and the figure of Mao Suifeng also disappeared. Is it right that I have obviously caught him? Su Tong turned around and looked behind him. There was silence everywhere, and there was no one in the corridor that was originally full of people. Old Bai. Fatty. Su Tong shouted, but no one answered him. Looking around with his divine eyes, he couldn't see anything clearly. It was like he was alone in another world. It's the cave again. Su Tong frowned, thinking of the sound that came out of Mao Suifeng's mouth just now. I have 8 strange caves in the Yin Mountains, where I live forever and live forever. This sentence clearly refers to a cave. Thinking of the shrine enshrined in front of Mao Suifeng's desk, Su Tong can basically confirm his situation. Why do so many gods appear in this script world? Originally, he didn't take Wu Sheng Lao Xian's words to heart. It was because of his own preconceptions that since the script world was a confrontation between alliances and was placed in the background of the end of law, his main enemies should be the players of the Japanese script club. But now it seems that it is completely different from what he thought, or that he thought wrong, and he was completely wrong. Certification level scripts will definitely not be so superficial. The gods appearing one after another, as well as Chang Wogu and Gao Zhou who have not completed the certification task, are obviously problematic. And I am afraid that the answers to these questions can only be known by finding this old Yinshan mother first. Su Tong stepped forward, cautious with every step. Although land gods are the limit of human beings, and those who go up are true immortals, the other party is a god. Although he has never heard of his name, his strength may not be worse than his own. Ding! Walking down the steps, Su Tong suddenly heard a clear ringing sound in his ears. Looking sideways, he saw a figure covered by black cloth standing there at the end of the corridor. Skinny palms poked out from the black cloth, revealing blue-gray skin. The bell in his hand swayed slightly. Ding 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 ding. The piercing bell sounded, as if summoning something, a strange smell, and Su Tong even smelled a strong smell of blood in his nose. At this time, Su Tong suddenly felt itchy, as if something had fallen on his skin. He reached out and wiped a handful of mold-like hairs in his palm. What's this? Looking at the tuft of hair on his hand, Su Tong felt his heart beat inexplicably faster, and an indescribable feeling surged into his heart. Fear. Yes, this was a fear he rarely showed. The last time it appeared was when he saw the old bastard on the surveillance camera. Jingle. The ringtone became more and more harsh, and his body became more and more itchy. He raised his arm, and a horrifying scene appeared. Black mold came out of his body, emitting a strong stench. What is this? Su Tong frowned and shook his body violently to call out the great Sun Ruyi furnace. The hot flames enveloped Su Tong's body, trying to burn away the mold. However, a strange scene made him widen his eyes. Instead of being burned to ashes in the flames, the molds accelerated their growth as if they had received some nutrients. No matter what method Su Tong used, he could not peel the mold off his body, even if he stretched out his hand to tear it off. Jingle bell. The shadow shrouded in black robes in front of him kept shaking his bell, approaching Su Tong step by step. Its steps are very slow, but the surrounding environment seems to be washed away by time with each step. The paint on the wall begins to peel off, and the hanging posters quickly turn yellow and black at a speed visible to the naked eye, until the black shadow disappears. Walking by the poster, this poster has decayed into a pinch of white powder. Not good. Seeing this, Su Tong felt a chill in his heart, and summoned the pure yang sword to strike the opponent with sword energy. However, after the sword energy penetrated the opponent's body, it did not have any impact on the opponent. Seeing that his attack was ineffective, cold sweat broke out on Su Tong's forehead. Boom. At this time, a dull leather drum sound sounded, and the sound came suddenly. As soon as the sound rang, Su Tong felt that all the meridians in his body were beating uncontrollably. When he looked sideways, his heart tightened. No, there is another one. Another figure appeared at the corner of the steps going downstairs, but what was different from the black figure in front of him was that this guy was covered in a layer of white cloth, tightly wrapped from head to toe, and had a pair of chubby little hands. Holding a small leather drum, Su Tong's veins on his forehead pulsed every time he struck it. The sound of the snare drum was getting faster and faster, and Su Tong's facial features began to become distorted. Walk. Seeing that there was no way to deal with it for the time being, Su Tong decisively ran away. However, there are more and more molds on his body. Escape can only slow down the growth of the molds, but cannot really get rid of them. From time to time, his internal organs feel sharp pain, which makes Su Tong's face become paler. Da-da-da-da. There was only the sound of Su Tong's heavy footsteps in the empty corridor. He tried to use the Buddhist Vajra body and Bodhi golden fruit skills Buddha's light to expel the mold on his body, but the effect was extremely bad. Instead of allowing the mold to be purified, there are more and more of them. Now Su Tong did not dare to continue trying rashly. These molds had already spread to his cheeks. It was hard to imagine what it would be like if these things spread all over his body. Thinking of this made his skin crawl all over, and he inevitably felt a little disgusted. It's so ugly to die. Su Tong was running in front, but the two monsters behind him, one black and one white, were chasing behind him slowly. Their pace was very slow, and everything they passed decayed, and then they were attacked by an unknown force. With a loud explosion, Su Tong even saw that the steel bars in the soil were twisted and emitted a harsh hissing sound, full of despair and destruction. Find a way to get out of here first, and then get rid of these dirty things on your body, otherwise I won't be able to last long if I continue to stay. To deal with these gods, only by knowing yourself and the enemy can you have a chance of winning. My current state is getting worse and worse, and I don't have the qualifications to be reckless. However, just when Su Tong was thinking about how to leave, he raised his head and his pupils suddenly tightened. I saw a figure in the empty corridor with his back to me. From the back, he looked like an old man. His withered body made it difficult for him to straighten his waist. He had his hands behind his back and the rungs in the corridor, as if he was waiting. Just like myself. Seeing this, Su Tong couldn't help but take a deep breath, took out the Pure Yang sword from the prop book, held it in his hand, and stepped forward step by step, but the old man never made any move. But as it got closer, the rotten stench gradually became more pungent. Just when Su Tong wanted to get close to the old man, his ears suddenly moved and he saw the door to the side open. The door was quietly opened a crack, a pair of eyes observed behind the crack, and then stretched out his hand towards Su Tong, motioning for him to come in quickly. Su Tong looked at the blue veins on the opponent's outstretched palm and hesitated for a moment. However, before he could think about it, he felt a sharp stabbing pain in his internal organs, as if a sharp knife had pierced his body. Huge pain. Seeing Su Tong's ugly face, the other party seemed to have summoned up the courage to reach out and grab Su Tong and pull him into the room. Bang. Then the door was slammed shut, and there was a sudden silence in the dark room. Su Tong finally saw the whole person, and what shocked Su Tong was that the person in front of him turned out to be Mao Suifeng. Although compared with Mao Suifeng in the photo, the guy in front of him was already so thin that he was almost out of shape. He hadn't taken a shower for who knows how many days, and his face was covered in mud. But Su Tong can be sure that he is Mao Suifeng. At this moment, Mao Suifeng pressed his body tightly against the door, signaling Su Tong to keep quiet. Ding bell, dong dong. The footsteps outside the door were getting closer and closer, and the surrounding walls began to decay rapidly. From time to time, you could even hear a dull cracking sound from the steel bars in the wall. Su Tong looked at his arm, only to find that the mold on his body did not continue to grow at this moment. Does it mean that if you hide in your room, you won't be affected? With doubts, Su Tong quietly walked to the door, squinted along the crack in the door and looked outside. There was no eye-to-eye scene like in traditional horror movies. He only saw a gray corridor outside, and the footsteps seemed to be noisy. He didn't stop, he kept moving forward. Only when the sound faded away did Su Tong feel relieved, while Mao Suifeng sat down on the ground, with a look of horror on his face as he escaped from death. Spear Suifeng? Su Tong asked tentatively. Eh? Do you know me? Mao Suifeng raised his head unexpectedly and looked at Su Tong. Su Tong knelt down, looked at Mao Suifeng, and nodded. I am a policeman, here to investigate the cause of your death. Su Tong stared at Mao Xianfeng's expression as he spoke, trying to see the answer he wanted from his face. Mao Suifeng was stunned for a moment, but soon showed a look of relief. He lay on the ground and let out a dumb laugh. It turns out that I am really dead. Do you know you are dead? Many people have a vague will when they die and do not know about their death, and they even subconsciously think that they are still alive. Mao Suifeng's first reaction when he heard this was that it was indeed the case. I don't know either, but I felt it after I came to this ghost place. There are no living people in this place at all. Mao Suifeng scratched his head, thinking of what he had experienced recently, with a look of horror on his face. At first I thought this place was the underworld, the 18th level of hell, but later I realized that this place is scarier than hell. Mao Suifeng seemed to have a lot to say, but when he opened his mouth, he couldn't say anything. He just raised his head and glanced outside the crack of the door. After making sure that no one was there, he glanced at Su Tong. You should be a living person, right? Su Tong frowned and nodded. How do you know? Because you bleed. Ghosts don't bleed. Mao Suifeng pointed at Su Tong's arm, and saw a wound on his arm at some point. The wound was very shallow. If the mold hadn't been growing on the arm, the wound would have healed by now. But Mao Suifeng was able to tell from this small wound that he was a living person, which shows that this child is indeed a smart person. No living person can spend the night here. A living person broke in by mistake before and was forced out by a force the next day. Good. Su Tong nodded. Do me a favor and tell my mom. I have 6 oceans hidden in the second book on the bookshelf. I originally saved them for next year's tuition, but I don't need them now. Tell my mom quietly, don't let my dad know. Hearing Mao Suifeng's words, Su Tong couldn't help but sigh. This child is very special. He is in the big dive out of Kowloon City and still wants to change his destiny through reading. But fate had him involved in this matter, which really made Su Tong feel regretful. Just when Su Tong wanted to ask Mao Suifeng further how he came into contact with the shrine of the Yinshan Mother. Suddenly, an unexpected voice came from the team channel. Chang Wuju, you idiot, stop playing with birds there and come over here and help me. The familiar roar startled Su Tong. Suddenly he realized something, and he immediately wanted to understand why the 2 unlucky guys Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu had not completed the certification and joined them. It turned out that they were here. Ah! Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 847. Even if Gao Zhou and Chang Wuji's abilities are not top-notch among certified players, they are definitely considered masters among masters. Especially after the 2 received huge script points, their strength improved so quickly. Judging from the strength of the 2 of them, they should have completed the most basic identity tasks long ago and then joined them. But the problem arises here. There has been no news from the 2 of them. Su Tong once wondered whether the 2 of them had not really entered the world of scripts. Only at this moment did Su Tong understand that they had entered the script world, but the script world they entered and the script world he entered were completely different worlds. Gaozhou. Su Tong tentatively shouted in the team channel. After a while, I heard Gaozhou's scream coming from the team channel. Am I hallucinating? I just heard him yelling at me. Soon Chang Wahan said, I heard it too. Hearing the voices of the two people, Su Tong felt ecstatic and quickly shouted, You two fools, why are you here? This time both of them heard it for real. Soon Gao Zhou and Chang Liuja shouted excitedly, Boss, it's really you. Damn it, you're here. What's going on with you guys? Why are you completing the certification mission now? Where are Gu Zibai and that fat man? Chang Wugu asked what Su Tong originally wanted to ask as soon as he opened his mouth. Su Tong was speechless for a moment and didn't know how to explain. He could only comfort them and tell them his situation. When the two of them heard this, they were immediately stunned. There are actually two different maps in a script world. What kind of script is this? This is too weird. I have never heard of such a situation. Chang Wugu suddenly seemed to have figured out something and asked quickly, So, you have already started the Alliance mission in the outside script world, right? How many points do we have now? I have more points. I am now ranked first with 1,400 points. There are several others below me with a total score of 8,400 points. After hearing the news, the team channel suddenly fell silent. After a while, Chang Liuja said, Damn, this shit script is so humming deceptive. Gao Zhou was also cursing, and the two of them seemed to be stimulated by something. After cursing for a while, they heard Chang Wahan say to Su Tong. We all consume a number here every day. Throw away the total we consume and the remainder we have now, and the total adds up to exactly 8,400. This. Su Tong understood immediately when he heard this, you mean, the number of points we earn determines how many days you can survive here. That's probably what it means. In addition to the fixed consumption, there is a strange shop here. There are many props in it that are very convenient for survival here. You also need to use this number to exchange them. When Chang Wugu's IQ is not online, everything he does is very helpless, but once this guy's IQ is online, he can instantly become a Sherlock Holmes. They never understood the meaning of this number before, nor did they know how to increase the number, so they never dared to redeem the charm props in the shop. It was only at this moment that they realized that the number that determined their lives turned out to be Alliance points. Listening to Chang Liuja's analysis, Su Tong probably understood in his heart that these two unlucky guys were two protons. By the way, did you leave the name Ma Hongwen behind? What happened to the resurrected spear Swafeng? Su Tong asked about the cloth strip. Gao Zhou knew this, and his eyes lit up when he heard Su Tong's question, Boss, have you met Xiao Shan? It turned out that there were originally 4 of them, and besides Gao Zhou, there were 2 other players who entered this world like them. They discovered that a strange prop would appear in the store every time, called the Yang Return Talisman. The entry introduction of this item is that it can make them leave this place. So with the mentality of giving it a try, they collected a sum of money and exchanged it for this thing. The reason why Xiaoshan was chosen is because Xiaoshan is a scattered player, and it is most fair to let him go out. The name Ma Hongwen was told by Gao Zhou to Xiaoshan, because none of them knew what the so-called departure was about. If Xiaoshan encounters Su Tong outside, he might be able to get help by calling Ma Hongwen. As for Mao Suifeng, he didn't recognize him. Boss, this kid Xiaoshan is a nice guy. Have you met him yet? Give him a test. If appropriate, you can bring him into our team. Gao Zhou pleaded for Xiaoshan in the team channel, but Su Tong just sighed and said helplessly, he may be dead. 2 corpses in the morgue were resurrected one after another. Something might have happened to the corpse in the front, and it was brutally dismembered by the person who resurrected it behind. Only now did Su Tong understand why the resurrected Mao Suifeng wanted to tear the corpse into pieces. Because they were borrowing the corpse to resurrect the soul, so they were worried that the killing would not be complete, so they simply tore the corpse into pieces. But I didn't expect that before Xiaoshan died, he wrote down a piece of paper, leaving the 3 words Ma Hongwen as a clue for himself. After hearing the news, Gao Zhou was stunned for a long time, and then cursed the street. It must have been those bunch of devils. Damn it, last time we exchanged things and just left, we saw them sneaking out. The resurrected spear Swafeng must be from the devils. Just as Su Tong was about to say something, a strange feeling suddenly came over him, and the surrounding space began to gradually become blurry. You have to leave, no living person can spend the night here. Mao Swafeng looked at him and said, remember to tell my mother that the money is very important to her. Under Mao Swafeng's gaze, Su Tong's eyes flashed, and then the sky and the earth began to spin. His body seemed to have been drained of strength, and he sat down on the ground. Master Du. Before his vision was clear, he heard a frantic shouting in his ears. I don't know how long it took, but Su Tong felt a chill all over his body, and then he faintly woke up. Opening his eyes, he saw Gu Zibai standing beside Su Tong, holding a wu hook in his hand, with a dark face, guarding beside him like a Dharma protector. Seeing Su Tong seen coming, Gu Zibai immediately asked with concern, what's going on? Why did you suddenly faint? Fainted. Su Tong shook his head and looked around, only to see that Li Bo had led others to clear the area, and he was lying on the cold floor. The two of them found that Su Tong was unconscious, and their hearts were in their throats. Su Tong immediately said every word. Everyone was convinced, but there was inevitably resentment in their hearts. They were afraid that if someone fired a dirty gun at this time, Su Tong would be unprepared. Under such circumstances, it is difficult to ensure safety. So as soon as he discovered that Su Tong was unconscious, Gu Zibai had already taken action, beating everyone who tried to get close to Su Tong to half to death regardless of the situation. Li Bo even pulled out his gun and started to confront Do Fei's people. Regardless of whether he was really concerned or fake, no one dared to take the risk, just in case there were Japanese players sneaking in. How long have I been unconscious? Su Tong asked as he rubbed his forehead. 2 minutes later, from the moment you chased me to the stairs, you suddenly froze on the spot. I rushed over and found you unconscious. That's not right. It took me a very long time to enter that cave, definitely not more than 2 minutes. It seems that after entering the cave, time and space will be disrupted to a certain extent in reality. He shook his head and stood up, pushed away a bin in front of him, and walked to Do Fei. He walked up to Do Fei and cupped his hands. I'm sorry, brother Do Fei, I was out of luck just now. This brother of mine hurt one of your people. The Yuxing gang will definitely not be short of medical expenses and compensation. Do Fei's face was not very pretty, but when he saw that Su Tong had returned to normal, he could only raise his arms with a dark face. Master Du, what are you talking about? It's because some of my brothers don't have good eyesight. Su Tong could hear the strong smell of gunpowder in Do Fei's words. After all, this was Hong Sheng's territory. The people on Su Tong's side injured more than 10 people with just one move. They were really overbearing. Ha ha ha, brother Do Fei is indeed an adult. I owe you this favor. Su Tong said carelessly, holding Do Fei's shoulder. Hearing this, Do Fei's face looked much better. Su Tong turned around and walked to Mao Swafeng's house. He came to Mao Swafeng's bookshelf and took out the second book from the left. After taking it out, he opened the book and saw that there were 7 oceans hidden inside. Sister, Swafeng is a good kid. This is his way of filial piety to you. Put it away. Mao Swafeng's mother took the book. After seeing the 7 oceans in it, her emotions were completely unbearable. The heart-wrenching cry made anyone feel sore after listening to it. Su Tong comforted her. He didn't like to see such a scene. He signaled that Mao Swafeng's mother could come to him for help if she had any difficulties in the future, and then prepared to leave. Wait a minute. At this time, Mao Swafeng's mother suddenly remembered something. She stood up and started rummaging through the box behind her for a while, and then found a small box under Mao Shuifeng's bed. Shuifeng's death is a shame. You must redress his grievances. This child used to be very obedient, but this thing harmed him. Su Tong took the box and frowned after opening it. A strong sense of oppression made him very uncomfortable. He calmly put the box away and put it into the prop book. The indescribable dream-haired villain. It is rumored that this is a passport to enter another world, but there is also a legend that this is an invitation to enter hell. Be careful, it is not a world of living people. Special Ability 1, Dream Walking. It consumes 1000 script points. After activation, a door will open in a specific area, allowing you to enter a special space. Duration, 30 minutes. Ding. You are the first to obtain the key props. Please check it out by yourself to start the Alliance's main mission series. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 848. The prompts kept ringing from the props book. Su Tong quickly called out the props book and glanced at it, only to see 4 tasks updated at once. He patiently scanned them one by one. Main Mission 2, the non-existent clue has been completed, and all team members have obtained 300 Alliance points. The non-existent clue should refer to that piece of cloth. He has already learned about the problem in the cave and has obtained the key prop, the indescribable Menfa villain. Naturally, this task is completed. All members received 300 points, which instantly brought their Alliance's total points to 10,000 points. I believe these points can make the 2 unlucky guys Gao Zhou and Chang Wogu live more comfortably in the cave world. The prompts in the prop booklet have not ended yet, and new tasks are constantly being refreshed. Alliance Mission 2, Shinkong University. Mission Requirements: enter Shinkong University and investigate the truth about the student who committed suicide. Mission Reward: earn 300 Alliance points. Mission Failure: 30% personal points will be deducted. Privilege Coordinator: perhaps starting with the student union is a better choice. Xingguang University. Su Tong remembered that Mao Shuifeng seemed to be a student of this school. It seemed that the problem lay in this university. Not long ago, Guo Xiang and the others had said that the Japanese were going to hold an antique exchange meeting at the university, and she could take the opportunity to go and see it. If given a chance, he might be able to hunt down enemy players. Main Mission 3, Shrine. Mission Requirements: find 7 special shrines and destroy them. Mission Reward: 2000 Alliance points and access to Alliance growth privileges. Mission Failure: 70% of Alliance points will be deducted. Privilege Coordinator: in the new world where fish and dragons are mixed, there will always be some shady things. Maybe those witches who believe in ghosts and gods can give you some clues. After seeing this mission, Su Tong suddenly looked at the shrine on the wall of Mao Shuifeng, but strangely, the statue of the god originally enshrined in the shrine had disappeared. This is not unexpected. Thinking about the appearance of the corpse that Mao Shuifeng borrowed just now, it may be the old mother from Yinshan who sensed the danger and deliberately used the plan to move the tiger to move the mountain. Now the statue in the shrine has long since disappeared. As for how it disappeared, it's hard to say. Maybe it was some kind of mysterious force, or maybe there were followers of Yinshan Mother in Kowloon City. In short, the problems in this mixed city of Kowloon are very big. This can't help but make Su Tong regret a little, regretting that he killed old immortal Wu Sheng too early. The secret that this guy said before is probably what he is eager to know at this moment. However, under the circumstances at that time, Xiaopang urgently needed a lot of life essence to replenish it, and he didn't care about it anymore. Even if he chose again, he would still sacrifice the old immortal Wushan on the spot. Side Mission 2, The Truth About the Cave. Mission Requirements: use the prop the unspeakable dream-haired villain 3 times to enter the cave. Mission Time Limit: 12 days. Mission Reward: Alliance points increased by 30%. Privilege Coordinator: be careful, Not every person who opens the door for you wants to help you. Alliance Mission 3, Hunt. Mission requirements: kill enemy and allied players in the cave as much as possible within the time of Dream Walk. Mission reward: killing enemy and allied players in the cave will earn double alliance points. If all opponents are killed, enemy and allied players will receive a random punishment. Privilege Coordinator: there is a special store in Dongtian, and you may be able to get good results there. These two tasks are a branch and an alliance, but they can only be completed by entering the cave and belong to the same map. After thinking about it in his mind, Su Tong decided to wait 2 days to gather with Guo Xiang and his team, and then everyone entered the cave together. There were more people and more power. If they could kill all the Japs in the cave, I believe that the so-called random punishment would definitely make them. I felt uncomfortable for a long time. In addition, Su Tong also has another worry, that is, the resurrected Mao Suifeng. This person is probably a Japs player. He was resurrected through special props and killed Xiao Shan. Maybe the Japs are also concerned about Dongtian. Already know that. After appeasing Mao Suifeng's mother, Su Tong left Kowloon City with his people. On the way, Su Tong briefly introduced the situation he had learned to Gu Zibai, Li Bo, and the pharmacist working in the pharmacy through the team channel. One script, 2 different worlds. Isn't this too weird? It was the first time Gu Zibai heard about this strange pattern, and he felt very surprised. The weirdest thing is not this, but the things in the cave. When Su Tong mentioned that he met the black and white weirdo and the old man in the corridor, he couldn't help but feel very strange. It seems that it is difficult for him to use his own methods inside. The other party is not afraid of pure yang energy, which is somewhat beyond his expectation. Especially that mold. Thinking of this, Su Tong opened his clothes. Although the mold had disappeared, he always felt that there was something unclean about him. You need to ask the master about this matter. I believe that even if the master is unclear, the master's wife and Mei Xian will always have some clues. Thinking of this, Su Tong felt much relieved. No wonder people say that having an old man in the family is like having a treasure. It is obviously not unreasonable. Diddy. At this time, Su Tong's pager rang, and it was a message from Guo Xiang and others, indicating that they could meet and chat at Futai Tea House. Alliance missions can be seen as long as they belong to the same alliance. Guo Xiang and the others should have seen the alliance mission information this time. So Li Bo went back to the police station for the time being. This guy was not strong enough. Whether he encountered Japanese players or those so-called gods, it would be a disaster. But it was definitely not enough to just eat for free, and Su Tong was not going to leave him idle and let him continue investigating Mao Suifeng's mission. Originally, Li Bo's original mission of investigating the zombies was not over. Now Alliance Mission 2 is also at Guanghua University. The two missions can be merged together. It would be best to investigate Li Bo's identity and explore the way. Su Tong specifically asked Li Bo not to reveal the identity of the player, and not to reveal his abilities until he had to do so when in trouble. Li Bo felt no pressure at all about this matter. After patting his chest and assuring Su Tong, he hurried straight to Guanghua University with others. Then a Ben drove Su Tong and Gu Zibai to Futai Tea House to meet Guo Xiang and the others. As soon as they went upstairs, they saw Guo Xiang and Tai Xiao already sitting in the box waiting for them. After meeting Su Tong, the two of them obviously had problems. Su Tong asked Gu Zibai to guard the door to prevent the partition wall from getting behind his ears, and briefly explained the situation briefly. Regarding the matter in Dongtian, Guo Xiang and Tai Xiao seemed very calm. So that's it? Let me just say, the world background of the script is too bland. It turns out that there is another layer to the script. Guo Xiang showed a relieved look. Seeing this, Su Tong took a sip of tea and continued to look at Guo Xiang. He only heard Guo Xiang say, "It seems that the people in the main group have encountered this situation, but compared with the people in the main group, it should not be difficult. The main regiment Guoxiang mentioned was their backer, Momin, one of the 6 regiments. At this time, the advantage of having a big tree behind became apparent. Momin had 3 subgroups and 1 main group. They shared intelligence information with each other, so that in similar situations, Guoxiang could quickly find the corresponding information. That cave sky should be created by some eliminated gods. As long as you find the shrines of these gods, you can kill them. But if the cave sky is their territory, we must follow their rules, otherwise we will very passive. Guoxiang analyzed the experience shared by the main group. The so-called eliminated gods are actually gods that originally had believers in the long history, but they may have been forgotten by people due to factors such as changes in dynasties or the accession of new emperors to the throne. They are not very powerful in themselves, but sometimes they can be very difficult to encounter. Of course, there is no denying that some very powerful ancient gods will occasionally appear among them. Once such gods are encountered, they will have a narrow escape. After learning that Su Tong had a key prop in his hand, the indescribable manful little man that could enter the cave on his own initiative, Guoxiang couldn't help but be very surprised. She didn't expect such a key prop to be obtained by Su Tong so quickly. I have never heard of the Kimin team before, but both Su Tong and Gu Zibai beside him are extremely strong. If Momin does not recruit such a team, I am afraid that it will be recruited by other teams in the future. Thinking of this, Guoxiang expressed his willingness to enter the cave with Su Tong, and first find a way to kill the Japanese players in the cave. This idea coincided with Su Tong's. The 2 parties agreed that it was best to act quickly, so they agreed to act together tomorrow night. By the way, is Xiaoshan one of yours? Su Tong remembered another thing at this time and asked casually. After Guoxiang and Tai Xiao heard the name, they were startled and nodded immediately. Su Tong briefly talked about the morgue, but the strange thing was that the 2 of them did not receive Xiaoshan's death notice. This situation shows that Xiaoshan may not be dead, but his resurrected body has been destroyed. Maybe he is still in the cave, which is good news. The 2 parties agreed on a time, and Su Tong and Guoxiang separated. When he got home, it was already 7 o'clock in the night. After Su Tong had a full meal, he received a message from Guoxiang. It was Su Tong who asked them to investigate Mao Suifeng before. The message was very short. It mentioned that Mao Suifeng was a child who loved to study. However, his classmates said that he seemed to have joined a group called Mengshen recently. Interest societies. They asked Debo and others to continue investigating this matter. After Su Tong sent the contents intact to Li Bo, he entered the room and used the mountain buckle to escape between reality and reality. Guoxiang and the others shared a lot of information, but Su Tong always felt that Guoxiang was too understated, and it was not at all the same as what he felt in the cave. Therefore, Su Tong remained on the sidelines regarding their intelligence. Tomorrow night, I will enter the cave again. Time is running out. I must be prepared, at least to see if Master and the others can do anything. Some people think that the progress of the plot is too slow during this period. Well, there is a reason for this, because I have rechanged a lot of the plot. If I follow the original design of the main line, the conflicts in the plot have already begun to conflict at this time, but I am too sensitive recently to write like that. I changed the plot so that the progress is a little slower. I'm sorry, but the script itself is not too big, and it will end in about 80 chapters. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 849. Entering between reality and reality, Su Tong took a quick look and saw the old man squatting at the door. Co-authored by the eldest princess, it was a big holiday during this period. Tian Tian and his wife took some time off from their busy schedule, leaving the old man on duty alone. Huh. When the old man saw Su Tong, he immediately frowned. When he walked to Su Tong and raised his nose, he couldn't help but take 2 steps away with a look of disgust on his face. "Master, why do you smell so bad? Rancid." Su Tong raised his arm and sniffed a few times, but he didn't smell anything. "Well, it's really a bit bad." The old Taoist pinched his nose, and after carefully examining Su Tong's face again, he suddenly looked a little embarrassed. "Hey, something's wrong, go away." The old man said that he didn't care so much and called Su Tong to go inside, while quickly distanced himself from Su Tong. Su Tong was startled by Lao Dao's actions. He didn't know what was wrong with him that made Lao Dao so nervous. "Gentlemen, come out quickly, something happened to the young master." As soon as he entered the door, the old man shouted at the top of his lungs. Master and Mr. May were still enjoying tea. When they heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other and immediately stood up to greet him. The old Taoist led Su Tong straight to the master and Mr. May. Before Su Tong could say his greetings to the master and Mei Xian, he suddenly looked up and saw the master's face turn sinister, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. "What's wrong?" The master and mistress, as well as the eldest princess and the goddess of heaven, also heard the commotion. After the group came, they suddenly fell silent when they saw Su Tong's face. Su Tong's scalp was numb now. This is just like when an old Chinese medicine doctor takes your pulse. The originally smiling face suddenly becomes silent and frowns, which would make anyone else's heart skip a beat. "Master, why are you looking at me like this? Is there something wrong with my face?" Su Tong touched his face and felt that his skin was rough, but there was nothing abnormal about it. "Brother, you smell so bad." As soon as the goddess came out, she pinched her nose and hid away, saying, "I have seen someone who looks like you now." Su Tong heard this and asked, "What then?" "Then he died and buried himself in a pit of fire until no bones were left," the goddess said seriously. The corner of Su Tong's mouth twitched and he smiled bitterly. "You mean, I'm going to die too?" Everyone looked at each other immediately after hearing this, and finally in silence, Master Shuigui said with a solemn face, "You are almost running out of energy." "Ah!" Su Tong was shocked when he heard this. It wasn't that he was afraid of death, but that he couldn't understand what it meant that he was about to run out of energy. No matter how bad he is still a terrestrial god. If he hasn't figured out how gods play this trick, is he about to burp? This is a bit unreasonable. What's more, the food tastes delicious and the body is in great shape. When I came here just now, I ate a large table of food, and it didn't look like there was anything wrong at all. Seeing Su Tong's face full of questions, the eldest princess had already walked to him. After smelling Su Tong's smell, she frowned. "It's sour." "What's sour?" "My whole body is sore." The eldest princess pinched and wrinkled her nose. "What did you do, or where did you go?" Su Tong scratched his head. Where else could it be that he shouldn't go? It was the cave sky. "I came back today just to tell you that I was pulled into a cave by a woman named Yinshan Old Mother, and then came out." After hearing Su Tong's words, everyone frowned. The eldest princess on the side had a cold light in her eyes, and said angrily, "You are so brave, you dare to break into any place without knowing the details." After saying that, he stretched out his hand, took Su Tong's arm and walked back. The old Taoist on the side saw this and hurriedly said, "I'll get the wine, you guys get ready." As the old Taoist said this, he turned around and ran towards the wine cellar in the back mountain. The eldest princess took Su Tong to the yard where the master usually fished, and said angrily, "Quick, there is no time to explain, take off. This is too sudden." Su Tong stretched out his hand and wanted to take it off, but when he looked back, he found that the master and the others were staring at it. The master's wife and the goddess were also beside them. Even though Su Tong was thick-skinned, he was a little embarrassed at the moment. "Hurry up, you're going to stink in a little while." Seeing that Su Tong was still coquettish, the eldest princess became a little anxious and stretched out her hand to tear off Su Tong's clothes. Su Tong's expression changed, and he hurriedly avoided the eldest princess's claws, summoned fortune, and turned into an opaque screen in front of him. "I'll do it myself." "Oops, you grabbed the wrong place." The eldest princess obviously couldn't care so much anymore, and stretched out her hands to scratch Su Tong. At this time, the old Taoist also came, holding a wine vat that was taller than a person, and placed it in the yard. This was an old wine brewed by the Mei family. After the eldest princess pulled off Su Tong's last fig leaf, she raised her hand and threw it into the wine vat. Then he threw all the clothes Su Tong had just worn into a brazier, and the old man called out a flame and lit the brazier. Su Tong poked his head out of the wine vat, and when he was about to speak, his pupils suddenly tightened, and he saw that the old Taoist took out a hatchet from nowhere, and cut off the eldest princess's hands with one blow. Now Su Tong realized the seriousness of the matter. The old Taoist used a long chopstick to throw the eldest princess's arm into the brazier, and also took out a jar of strong wine and sprinkled it on the eldest princess's broken arm. "What on earth is it?" Su Tong raised his head and looked at the master, but the master and others remained sullen and silent. The master's wife and Mr. Mei walked to the wine jar, and saw Mei Xian open her mouth and spit out a ball of bright green light covering the wine jar. "Bear it." The old Taoist made a seal with his fingers, and a fire talisman fell on the wine vat, and suddenly the whole wine vat began to boil. Su Tong immediately felt a burning pain all over his body, and then a scene appeared that made his scalp feel numb. There were black worms oozing out from under his skin. After these bugs emerged from under the skin, they began to twist their bodies. The number was increasing, and even Su Tong's psychological quality began to feel uncomfortable. As soon as these bugs encountered strong alcohol, they jumped out of the wine vat and climbed on the green light that Mr. Mei spit out. After these bugs came into contact with the light mask spit out by Mei Lao, they began to rot quickly. Soon the bug corpses began to crack, and black mold burst out like popcorn to cover it. These molds. Su Tong looked at the thick layer of black mold in front of him with a horrified look in his eyes. These molds were exactly what had contaminated his body in the cave. After I left the cave, I thought the molds had disappeared, but I didn't expect that they turned into bugs and wormed their way into my body, and I didn't notice at all. I'll do the rest. Seeing the mold growing more and more, the master's wife stepped forward, her eyes gradually turned red, and then a manic and twisted aura emanated from the master's wife. She opened her arms, and a gash gradually opened in the master's palm. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a bloody mouth, sticking out its tongue greedily, and began to devour the blackened mold. But after a while, all these molds were eaten up by the huge mouth in the palm of the master's wife. Seeing that all the mold had been removed, the mistress covered her little mouth and burped, and then said angrily to Su Tong, "You kid, you really don't make people worry." "Master wife, what am I?" 5 declines of heaven and man. Before the master's wife could explain, the master Shuigui walked up to him and said, "The so-called 5 declines of heaven and man are precursors that will only appear when the immortal energy is almost exhausted. The first is that the body is smelly, the second is that the clothes are stained with dust, the third is that the hair on the head is wilting, the fourth is that the armpits sweat, and the fifth is that you are unhappy. This is the 5 declines of heaven and man." This statement is a common way of expression. When the 5 degenerations of heaven and man actually occur, it will be even more terrifying than these. These molds on Su Tong's body are only manifestations in the early stage. In the midterm, his luck will suddenly collapse overnight, and then he will become confused and even go crazy uncontrollably. The best result in the later stage is sudden death or active retreat. Otherwise, it is very likely that he will completely degenerate and become a monster that is neither human nor ghost. You said before that you entered a cave. You don't enter a place like this casually. People often say that caves are blessed places, but some caves are not blessed places, but evil holes. There was some self-blame on the master's face. It's also our fault for not warning you as soon as possible. We didn't expect that you would encounter those evil gods so soon. Su Tong was lying in the wine vat and saw his master Shuigui looking remorseful, and he suddenly felt guilty. Grandpa Shi, I was too reckless this time. Shuigui waved his hand. The matter has come to this, there is no point in being pretentious. Let's find a way to save you first. Once the 5 declines of heaven and man appear, it will be difficult to reverse. This method can only slow down the speed of your decline. Everyone wants to live. In order to live longer, those top rich people take a supplement worth millions every day, and can even achieve their goal of longevity through heart transplant surgery. This is true for humans, and it is true for gods as well. But death is fair, and no one can avoid it when it comes, and gods are no exception. Once the 5 declines of heaven and man occur, even gods and Buddhas cannot reverse it. The reason why those gods of death are called gods of death is precisely because they avoid the 5 declines of heaven and man through death. So, am I not dead? Su Tong blinked, but he didn't expect that he would die in such an inexplicable way. That's not necessarily the case. You were cursed by the evil god, so you may not have actually entered the state of devastation. As long as you catch this evil god, you will naturally have a chance to reverse it. After Shuigui said this, he asked Su Tong to tell everything he saw and heard after entering the cave. Although the master was only a great master before his death, after his death he would be able to serve as a servant under the ghost Emperor Du Ziren, and his experience would certainly be good. What's more, there are the knowledgeable Mr. Mei and his cheap wife beside him. After everyone heard what Su Tong told about the situation, several people gathered in a circle to discuss it like an expert consultation. Seeing such a scene, Su Tong felt warm in his heart at this moment, with an unprecedented sense of happiness. He raised his head and rested it on the edge of the wine vat. A smile gradually appeared on his face. This is the feeling of home. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 850. The master and his team discussed for a long time before they came up with a solution for Su Tong. The method is very simple, just one word. Master Shuigui raised a finger, his eyes were suddenly covered with a thick layer of haze, and he said with a cold and murderous look, "Kill." This is a solution, but it is not the solution. After Master Shuigui finished speaking, he continued, "If you find a way to enter that cave again, after entering, set up 2 paper figures and write your birth date on the backs of the paper figures. For the 8 characters, take a cup of sesame oil, put it on the shoulders and forehead of the paper figure, insert 3 hairs and stick it on it, then set up a spiritual tablet, burn yellow incense, add cinnabar, wave yin qian, sprinkle sake, and recite the 8 characters silently. Those 8 words." Su Tong blinked. "I just heard the master grinning coldly, as soon as you see wealth, the world will be at peace." Hiss. Su Tong narrowed his eyes. Good guy, the master is really cruel with this trick. There is no problem with the 2 paper figures. The problem is that the master asked him to write his birth date on the paper figures. After moistening the sesame oil and hair, if we invite the 7th master and the 8th master in again, these 2 yin gods will be attacked by the ghosts and gods in the cave when they are contaminated with their own aura. Until then, ghosts versus ghosts, magic versus magic. It would be strange if the sky was dark and the earth was dark. After the master finished speaking, he turned around and sat aside to drink tea. At this time, the eldest princess came over. "I will go back with you later. Next time we enter the cave, we will go in together." Su Tong glanced at the eldest princess's broken arm. Although with the princess's strength, it was not difficult to regenerate the broken arm, but thinking of the moment when the old master swung the sword just now, his heart still couldn't help but feel like it was tightly grasped by something. One time. So he wanted to refuse and let the eldest princess have a good rest, otherwise, you can rest here. What, you think I'm in the way? The eldest princess raised her brows slightly, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. Su Tong quickly shook his head. No, 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 I'm worried about your injury. Humph, that's pretty much it. I'm tired of staying here, so I might as well go out and relax. The eldest princess did not give Su Tong another chance to dissuade her, and turned around and ran to the kitchen. The old Taoist came up and whispered, "Be content, that is, if others dare to touch you, there is a risk of being contaminated by you if we touch you. You brat should cherish the people in front of you." The old Taoist's words couldn't help but make Su Tong a little stunned. He looked at the back of the eldest princess. He didn't know what he was thinking for a moment, and his mind was empty. "Hey, you're stupid." A small hand waved in front of Su Tong, and he saw the goddess standing in front of the wine tank, looking at him with a smile. Her big watery eyes narrowed into a crescent shape, and she said in a coquettish tone, "Senior brother, you can't take me out for fun too? Go, go, don't join in the fun. I don't even know the origin of this girl Tianhu. If I really take her out, if any trouble arises, I won't be able to take care of her. Take her, as long as she doesn't eat chili peppers." At this time, the master's wife came over and said, seeing the worry in Su Tong's heart, the master's wife lowered her voice and said, "This girl has supernatural powers and can help you at critical moments." The master's wife had said this, but Su Tong still didn't know how to praise her. He could only nod his head, but he still thought to the goddess, "You don't have to go to Dongtian. It's okay to take you outside to play." The little girl seems to be a little tired of staying here. Mr. Mei Xian came over to take a look. After thinking about it for a moment, he said, "Take Maida out as well. It will be convenient for you if you have multiple people to take care of you." The Maida mentioned by Mr. Mei is the Yaksha zombie from the Mei family. Since following Su Tong and the others out of the underworld last time, this guy has found Mr. Mei and got some advice from Mr. Mei, but he also talked to Mr. Mei about a lot of things. Mr. Mei still values this descendant of the Mei family very highly. Su Tong thought to himself that next time he entered the cave, if there was someone outside to take care of him, he would not be in trouble, so he immediately nodded and agreed. "This is for you." At this time, Master Song Lao came over and handed a ball of incense merit to Su Tong. The incense merit was divided into two parts. One was golden, and the other looked a little messy and impure. It obviously contained many impure thoughts. The master separated them for the convenience of Su Tong. These incense merits with mixed intentions can help you suppress the mold on your body. You can keep these incense merits with pure intentions. Not too much, but not too little. Su Tong was really shocked when two heavy balls of incense and merit fell on his hands. He knew that during this period, with the momentum of the little fat man's last tribulation, he had greatly improved the image of the Dragon King. He did not expect that the amount of incense merit would be so impressive. Of course, this is inevitably inseparable from a bin's contribution. After all, leading people to run and sing every day is not an easy task for this fat man with a big belly. After Su Tong put away the two groups of merits, he took advantage of the break when everyone went to the front hall to drink tea, got out of the wine vat, and put on a new set of clothes. However, the clothes obviously did not match Du Annan's body. "I can just make do with covering it up." I looked back at the jar of wine. Su Tong thought for a while and threw the wine into the prop book. At first glance, the props book actually had entries returned. Polluted century-old wine. This is a centuries-old wine contaminated by a curse. Although there are no impurities in it, it is still extremely contaminated. Please clean it carefully. Drinkers will be contaminated and enter the 5 phases of minor decline. Note, it's someone's bath water, but it has no effect on the taste when you drink it. This is a good thing. Su Tong raised his brows slightly, and suddenly felt that this bottle of wine might be of great use, so he simply didn't plan to deal with it. He would try it when he had the opportunity to see if he could give it to the little devil to try. After taking a short rest, Su Tong took the eldest princess, the goddess of heaven, and made it to leave the space between reality and reality. After returning to the room, Su Tong called the steward. When the steward came in and took a look, he was stunned. He didn't know when there were 3 more people in the room. Su Tong signaled the steward to find him a suitable set of clothes and prepare some delicious food. After a night of troubles, the original inventory in Su Tong's stomach was already empty. But the eldest princess immediately stopped the steward, turned to Su Tong and said, "Eat dragon rice, whole grains will only aggravate your problems." The steward on the side was shocked. He didn't expect that someone would dare to disobey Mr. Du's wishes. However, Mr. Du didn't seem angry. Instead, he turned around and rummaged around the bedside and took out a white object about the size of a pot lid. "Then eat this and let the kitchen cook it with spring water, that's it?" "It's Mr. Du." The steward carefully took the thing over, and then looked at the woman carefully. He felt that although the woman was dressed simply, she had an aura of nobility about her, and she was no ordinary person at first glance. "This is my wife, this is my daughter, and this is my cousin. He came to the new territories not long ago to find me. He will live here from now on. Please take good care of him." Su Tong saw the steward's thoughts and introduced him to him. Upon hearing this, the steward immediately did not dare to be careless, but he could not help but mutter in his heart, "When did Mr. Du's wife come? Why didn't I know?" After the steward was sent away and Su Tong changed into suitable clothes, a bowl of hot dragon rice porridge was delivered to him. The taste was okay, but compared with the porridge cooked by Lilith, the difference was extraordinary. Big Gu Zibai was familiar with the eldest princess and Su Tong needed no introduction. After dinner, Su Tong took the eldest princess and the goddess to play outside. Walking on the street, the group of people is very eye-catching, whether it is Su Tong's hateful face, the princess's innate nobility, and the innocent and approachable aura exuding from the goddess. No matter where he goes, he is the center of attention. Oh, of course, there are also the Yuxing gang members behind them with axes on their waists. Such a combination of beauties and beasts, coupled with a group of ferocious spirits, makes it difficult not to attract attention while walking on the street. When I walked to Tianqiao Street, I heard a storyteller telling stories from a distance. This storyteller is talking about Xiang Gongbeo. It is said that he deceived the world, stole his reputation, brought disaster to the country and the people, and finally ascended to the throne and died violently in his family. After listening to it for a while, the eldest princess felt a little lost for a moment. She turned back to look at Su Tong. "We must have been in this era when we first met." "Well, it's not that far away. It just happened in the past few years." Su Tong nodded and looked at the eldest princess' severed hand. "Don't worry, I will recover tonight. My situation is special and I have already crossed the threshold of life and death. The 5 declines of heaven and man have little effect on me, so you don't have to worry." The eldest princess thought that Su Tong was worried about her broken hand, but she didn't know that what Su Tong really thought about was what the old man said. "Brother." At this time, the goddess suddenly reached out and pulled Su Tong's arm. Su Tong was interrupted by the goddess and couldn't help but said angrily, "Call me daddy." The goddess rolled her eyes. "Okay, then I'll ask my godmother how many fathers I have when I get back." Hiss. When Su Tong heard this, he suddenly took a breath of air. Good guy, why didn't he see that this girl was born with a traitor before? So he quickly changed his words and said, okay, you can yell whatever you want." The goddess raised her mouth, then pointed at the foot of the overpass. "Look at the old fortune teller over there. Su Tong looked for the goddess's hand and pointed at it. At a stall not far away, an old man wearing sunglasses was sitting on a chair waiting for business. To be noticed by the goddess, this old man must be no ordinary person. Su Tong's heart moved, and he took a closer look with his spiritual eyes. Sure enough, he found that although the old blind man was ordinary, he had a strange aura about him. After feeling it carefully, he found that this aura was quite familiar. It can't be such a coincidence. Su Tong immediately led everyone over. Hey, some of the guests want fortune telling or fortune telling. Although the old man is blind, he is not blind. He noticed someone coming towards him and quickly stood up and cupped his hands. Our family is very confident. We are not allowed to give away money. 3 hexagrams will give you 1 hexagram. The old blind man's accent obviously had a Beijing accent. When Su Tong heard his accent, most of his guesses were confirmed. He immediately sat down and asked with the Beijing accent, "The old man is from the Beijing. Why, we'll come here to make a living. Oh, I met a noble person today, good luck to you." When the old blind man heard the tone, he hurriedly raised his hands in greeting. To be honest, I can't survive in the capital, so I, a blind man, just followed him out to beg for a bite of food and live in peace. You're welcome. It's fate that we met each other. Please give me the golden touch of Mr. Jin. Su Tong stretched out his palm, and the old blind man did not dare to neglect it. After groping for a while on Su Tong's palm, his expression gradually became weird. It's strange that palmists like this have been working hard for half their lives. They are often poor people. Although their palms are big, they don't have wealth. There is murderous intention on their fingertips. They are not good people. But why doesn't this feel different from what I feel? The more the old man thought about it, the more strange he felt. He stood up and said, "It's so abrupt. Please come forward." Su Tong brought his face up, and the old man wiped his face again. His face suddenly showed a wry smile, and he sat down again. "Sir, you were born with a crossbones, destined to be a swordsman for most of your life. You have a protruding forehead and a murderous star. Although your fortune is not good, in this troubled world, but there is an opportunity to become a dragon." Su Tong immediately became happy when he heard this. This old man can talk. Du Annan's fate is very bad. To put it bluntly, he is a thug. If he hadn't played him, he would have changed him with his own strength. His fate is that sooner or later he will die violently on the streets. The old man also figured it out, but he just avoided the important things and ignored the light ones, instead of telling the truth. Seeing this, Su Tong became more playful, took the goddess's hand and said, "Then I'd like to trouble you, sir, to see what the fate of this little girl is." The old blind man nodded and put his hand on the goddess's hand. After groping for a few times, his face suddenly froze. He stretched out his hand tremblingly and continued to touch. The goddess simply put her face towards her, letting the old blind man feel free and bold. She groped over her head. "It was okay if I didn't touch him, but when I touched him, the old blind man's face changed, and he knelt on the ground with a plop. "Immortal, please forgive me." After saying that, he kowtowed to the goddess. Pedestrians passing by were also startled by the old blind man's actions. They had never seen an old man kowtow to a little girl. The goddess giggled when she saw this, as if she didn't mind being knelt down and kowtowed by an old man at all. Su Tong was secretly stunned for a while, wondering what the origin of this girl was. He quickly stretched out his hand to help the old blind man up. "Uncle, you may have seen it wrong. Where did this immortal come from?" The old blind man was startled and didn't know what to say. At this time, the eldest princess also came over. "Then try me too." Before her hand was healed, she put her face up to the old blind man and let him touch it. The old blind man was uneasy at the moment and wondered whether he had touched it wrong just now. How could there be an immortal in this world? Perhaps in order to regain some self-confidence, the old blind man took a deep breath and reached out to touch the eldest princess's forehead. As a result of this touch, the old blind man almost sat down on the ground and pointed at the eldest princess. "You are a ghost, you are a ghost, you are a ghost." At this moment, the eldest princess was also amused and laughed out loud. When passers-by looked at the smile on the eldest princess's face, their souls were almost taken away. They thought that if there were such beautiful ghosts in the world, they would die at the hands of ghosts. It's worth it? Seeing that the joke had gone too far, Su Tong hurriedly stretched out his hand to pull the old blind man up. "Old man, it's broad daylight, where is the ghost? Besides, with the blessing of the immortal, I wish you peace every year." The old blind man was startled and turned his head suspiciously. "Are you a follower of Fuxian?" Su Tong wanted to say that Fuxian was his husband, but he changed his words and said, "Yes, who in the capital doesn't know Fuxian?" It turned out that when I took a look from a distance, I noticed a familiar aura on the old blind man's body, which was exactly the aura on Mr. Wen Yuan's body. That's why he took the initiative to come forward and make a joke. Unexpectedly, the old blind man was scared half to death. Only after Su Tong said that he was a follower of Fuxian did the old blind man gradually relax. "I don't know, but there is a temple in the New Territories where there are blessed immortals?" Su Tong asked. "No, this kind of thing is not popular in the New Territories, so there is no temple built. However, I have a statue of Fuxian at home. If you need to, you can come to my house to worship." When Su Tong heard this, his mind immediately became active. It has been many years since Mr. Wen Yuan became a yin god. With his huge number of followers, he may have become a true god. If I can get his help, it might be a big help to me. But today is not the right time, so it's not too late to wait until after tonight. So he took out a roll of silver coins and handed it to the old blind man. "Forget it for today, I will go to pay homage to the immortal of fortune tomorrow. Please leave me your address." As soon as the old blind man touched the money, he felt a lot more at ease in his heart. He hurriedly said, "There is a private house under the bridge in the west. It is the second to last building. Okay, I won't bother you if I have something to do today. I will pay you a visit tomorrow and say goodbye." Su Tong nodded, cupped his hands towards the old blind man, and led everyone away. The old blind man fumbled for the money in his hand, still muttering in his heart, thinking, "Isn't this man poor? How can he get such a big money?" Just as the old blind man was thinking wildly, the boss of the wonton stall came over and said, "You are rich, blind man. Do you know Mr. Du? Master Du? Are you talking about Master Du from the Yuxing gang? You do not say." Hearing the boss's words, the old blind man slapped his forehead. "Hey, this damn thing of mine, the skills passed down from our ancestors, I made a mistake. I'm really ashamed of my ancestors." Su Tong didn't know that his little joke today made the old blind man begin to doubt his skills. He took everyone for a walk and then asked Ben to take Tianu back to rest. Then he took the eldest princess, Gu Zibai, and Maida straight to Kowloon City. The unspeakable dream-haired villain this prop can enter the cave, but it must be in a specific place. Su Tong estimated that one of the places is Kowloon City, so he made an agreement with Guo Xiang and Tai Xiao that it would be outside Kowloon City. Gather. When he arrived with his people, Guo Xiang and Dibo were already waiting outside. As for the other two members of their team, Tai Xiao and Dibo had other tasks. "These two are my teammates." After meeting Guo Xiang, Su Tong casually introduced the eldest princess and Mei Da. Guo Xiang raised his eyebrows. Of course he didn't believe Su Tong's words. After all, they were 5 men before entering the script world. Besides, they were not still, there are 2 of them inside, teammates here and there. However, Guo Xiang was also very sensible and did not reveal this relationship. She took out 3 compasses from the prop book and handed them to Su Tong. This thing is very important. If something abnormal happens, it will give you an early warning. Don't worry about what happens when the time comes. The most important thing is to escape first. Su Tong took it and carefully threw it into the prop book and looked at the entries. Evil God Pointer. A magical prop with a special magnetic field that is extremely sensitive to the legendary Evil God. Active Skill 1, Mortal Run. It consumes 100 script points. After activation, the red needle will point out a way out for you. Duration, 5 seconds. Cooling time, 30 minutes. The stuff was good. After Su Tong threw the stuff to Gu Zibai, he took out the indescribable Menfa villain. Let's go explore it tonight. Sorry, I had diarrhea today and I am exhausted. The update is a bit lacking. I will add more tomorrow to make up for it.